to our podcast. It's Hanson Fans Fired Up. I'm Tisha, and you are?
I'm Jill. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about the Underneath album because Hanson will be having their next concert series, which is in August. We're going to be going over Underneath, and next month they'll be doing Underneath and The Walk, but we are just going to do Underneath this time right now because there's just so much to unpackage with the album of Underneath.
So much, and I am so psyched because this is my absolute favorite part of Hanson band history, and to have somebody to nerd out with about this makes me so excited. Like every time somebody finds out I'm a Hanson fan and they're like, oh, didn't they sing Bop in the 90s? I'm like, time for you to be educated, and I give them the whole spiel, and I know every other fan out there does the same thing, so I am so excited to talk about it with people who know what's going on and who appreciate it.
Yes, it's something when you are able to like go with other Hanson fans, so you can like kind of like talk about the Hanson history and music, because not everyone gets it. Most people think that like you're crazy, like, oh, you're just this crazy Hanson girl. Like, no, I'm not. So we're going to start off with the Strong Enough to Break documentary. But before that, there was a gap between Middle of Nowhere this time around and Underneath. And Jill, I'll have you explain that because you do it so perfectly.
Oh, thank you. So, okay. So, well, a lot of people know and also get, I think, the time gap between the release of Middle of Nowhere and this time around was the same as the gap between this time around and Underneath Acoustic. It was 3 years. So it was a 1997 release, a 2000 release, and a 2003 release, followed by an electric 2004 release. So the time gap was the same, but the reason why the time gap between this time around and Underneath was so painstaking for the fan base is because there was nothing else going on. So between Middle of Nowhere and this time around, there was so much content. You had Snowed In, you had 3 Car Garage, the indie recordings, you had 2 home video releases, Tulsa, Tokyo, in the Middle of Nowhere, and Live from Albertine. There was so much content going on, and Hanson was appearing on TV shows, Live at the 10 Spot, Save the Music, VH1, MTV. They were on Jay Leno, they were on Oprah, they were on Jenny McCarthy, they were on Ricky Lake, just every single show. And then David Letterman, all of those shows. And that was happening constantly from 97 to 2000. And they were on the cover of every single teen magazine. From this time around to Underneath, it was basically almost totally silent. You had 1 home video release, which was Live at the Fillmore, which didn't even sell that many copies, I don't think. Not as much as Tulsa, Tokyo, in the Middle of Nowhere. They were not on TV anymore. Their videos weren't getting airplay on MTV. You would walk into, I remember when I was 15, you'd walk into the grocery store or the bookstore, and the magazine racks had Hanson plastered on every single cover. So you went from having to choose which magazines you could afford with your allowance or whatever, to flipping through them, desperately seeing if there was like one little tiny clipping of them in the lower corner of page 74. So it was just so much radio silence. And I think that's why the time gap between this time around and Underneath was so painful for the fan base. Also, we didn't know what was going on, and the only communication between Hanson and the fans at that time, because there wasn't Hanson.net, there wasn't there wasn't Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, all these communications. So the only thing we had was an episode of Mo Magazine, an issue of Mo Magazine that came out every 3 months. And it basically, during those 3 years, kind of said the same thing over and over, just in the studio, we're working really hard. We're going to try to get the album out to you as soon as possible. So you're just hearing ASAP every 3 months, and that's it. So you're missing your band, and you don't know where they are, and you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and I feel like, and what's so crazy is that as a fan, I didn't realize what Hanson was going through as a band. And we kind of got that inside look when they were able to release the documentary Strong Enough to Break. Now, I have to admit, I'm a fan where I didn't watch it until Jill was like, you have to watch this documentary. Like, it'll explain a lot. And I watched it last week, and let me tell you something. I was like on pins and needles, yelling at my TV. Like, it was super emotional because I just remember as a fan thinking, like, where the heck is Hanson? Like, you had Britney Spears, you had NSYNC, you had Backstreet Boys, like, they were everywhere. And I'm like, where is Hanson? Like, they need to be in the mix of all of this. Because in my opinion, if it wasn't for Hanson, there would not have been this great pop explosion for Britney Spears, for NSYNC, for Backstreet Boys. So for me as a fan, I'm like, where are they?
Yes.
And Strong Enough to Break, it breaks down where the guys were, what they were doing, their struggles, their heartaches. And for me as a fan, it made me appreciate the band even more.
I agree. And I think too, like, I just know when they came out and did the Underneath Acoustic tour in 2003,
Yes.
with the Underneath Acoustic album that came out, or the LP, the EP that came out, we were really proud of them. Like, I just remember the first time I saw, for the first time since 98, they came out on that stage with Taylor in his red suspenders. I went wild. Like, my heart was swelling to see them again. And I knew that they had talked about, like, they had a battle with their record label, but you didn't fully grasp the magnitude of it until Strong Enough to Break, which didn't come out until 2005. And it was originally released as a podcast. So we got sound bites once a week. We got, like, we saw the entire documentary 5 minutes at a time, once a week for like 6 months. And then it got released as a full DVD. So it was like through 2004 to 2005, we were like, we just want to know the whole story. But you just got that little podcast soundbite until you could finally see the whole documentary in 2005. And then you got the whole picture.
Yeah, and the whole picture to me is very daunting, and it's very, in a way, very sad, and in a way it's very kind of torturous in a way.
Yeah.
At that time, you're looking at Zach, who's like 17, 18. You're looking at Taylor, who's like 20, 21, and Isaac maybe like 22, 23. So to me, that's still a kid. You know, like they say your brain doesn't stop forming, it's like 26. So to me, they're still kids, they're still new in this industry. And what you find out what's happening to them is that they're really, in a way, they're being bullied in a very passive, aggressive way. And they're being stonewalled. They're being told that their music isn't good enough. They're being told that, you know, I feel like in a way they're being lied to. Instead of being talked to as professionals, they're having other people coming in and talking to them, kind of like, I feel like being spies, and they're reporting back to the main AR people of Island Def Jam. And so what you have in this scenario with Hanson is a really unhealthy environment.
Yeah.
And you could tell that it was really weighing in on the guys. One of the things that really made me really like angry is Taylor kept saying, "What do you want from us? Can you like tell us a direction? Like, what do you want us to do? Like, can you lead us down a direction of what kind of music you want us to do? We keep giving you songs and demos, but what do you want us to do?" And there will be like nothing.
And then they would change what they said. Like, they said they wanted a ballad, so Hanson wrote some ballads. Then they were like, no, we need radio play, so maybe we need an upbeat song. So they wrote upbeat songs. And then after they brought them the upbeat songs, they're like, oh, you know, like, I guess maybe we want something a little bit slower. And Isaac is like, you just told us you didn't want a ballad. Now you said you do want to, like, and Taylor, I remember that one phone call where Taylor was just like, we are trying so hard to get into your head and give you what you want. Just give us, like, they weren't giving them any feedback. And I think that, you know, Hanson were not, even though they were independent and they had their own vision, they were not above taking direction or mentorship. No. They were willing to co-write. They were willing to listen. They were willing to get the feedback. But it was like they were chasing them around in circles. And even when they contacted the attorney later in the second half of the documentary, the attorney for the music industry said, I've never seen anything like this in all my years of practicing music law. He's like, it's almost like he was intentionally torturing you.
Yes.
And the attorney said that.
Yeah. And I feel, I've been contemplating this because I knew we were doing this podcast coming up soon. And one of the things that I kept thinking about is what was happening to Hanson, to me in my own mind, it's personal. Like, you don't get that vindictive with someone unless it's personal. And I kind of feel like maybe unknowingly, maybe Hanson could have offended someone and they maybe not have known it. But I feel like when you are a person or a group like Hanson who has integrity, not only that, but they weren't a group that came from parents who were uneducated. They had parents who were educated. They had parents who were not like, yeah, just sign my kid up for anything and we'll take whatever you give. They had really, in my opinion, I believe they have really smart parents who were always there around. Walker was always around their dad, you know, so I kind of feel like, in a way, these companies felt like they couldn't manipulate Hanson maybe like as they could other kid artists because they had a strong foundation. And I believe that when you have a boss or anyone, if they can't manipulate you and you are able to stick to your integrity, that can personally make someone upset and angry. And I believe maybe unknowingly, Hanson probably could have done that, and that could have just caused like a snowball effect.